I'm Tom Holloway. I'm the immediate past president of FAA Speech Masters and the immediate past Division C director. And I got my DTM for the first time on July 1st. So uh, really want to thank you for your keynote presentation. You incorporated a lot of really good leadership training, which we greatly appreciate. I have a few questions for you. First, what attracted you to Toastmasters back in the day? I think it was in 2003.
Yes. So to be completely honest with you, what attracted me to Toastmasters originally was free food. I was working at Office Depot, which is a large company here in the U.S. I know there's several Office Depots in your area. And I was working in the IT department at Office Depot, and one of my coworkers, who was a member of the club, said, "Hey, Matt, we've got this lunch and learn event. And for your corporate clubs, this is something I highly recommend. They do this every 3-4 months. They get one of the executives come in, do a presentation. They do an abbreviated meeting talking about Toastmasters over lunchtime, and they provide pizza." And I was like, well, I wasn't really interested in Toastmasters, but free food sounded good. So I went. And what I saw there at that meeting started my journey here. And it wasn't the speaker. I want to be very clear. It wasn't the speaker. The speaker was interesting. I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. But what intrigued me was the evaluation. And what I knew about myself personally at that time was that I was very good at giving negative feedback. Oh. I was really good at finding out everything you had done wrong in something and helping you understand it. And what I thought was a positive way, but what I was hearing from other people was it didn't land on them the same way. And so I knew I needed to be better at giving feedback. I also knew I needed to be better at receiving feedback, because I tended to be dismissive of feedback, especially positive feedback. And I had a boss one time who got very mad at me. He came up to me and he said, "Hey, Matt, I want to thank you. You know, the work you did on this project made me look really good with my boss, and I appreciate it." And I just made some offhand comment, "Oh, yeah, no big deal. That's who I am." And he threw a fit. He's like, "Don't you ever do that to me again." I was like, "What?" You know? He goes, I went out of my way to thank you, and you just dismissed it. Don't you ever do that again. I've never forgotten that lesson. And so I knew I needed to be better at receiving feedback, especially positive feedback, because I tended to be dismissive of it and not really reflect on what it said about me and my character, that someone took the time to give me some positive reinforcement.
Great advice. If you would, you've come a long way since you first joined Toastmasters. If you would briefly trace your Toastmasters journey since then?
Okay. Well, in 2003, I joined, and June 1st or July 1st, 2004, I became Vice President of Education. And I worked through the VP Education year, and later that year, someone came to me and goes, "Oh, man, we'd like to be an area governor," which was the title at the time. Yep. And I was like, "I'm going to be club president next year. I have no interest in that. I didn't even know what it meant." And I joined club president, and that same individual, who actually became district governor later and kind of my mentor for many years, she remembered that I had said I didn't want to be an area governor because I was going to be club president. And so then she came to me, "Well, you're finishing your year as club president. How do you like to be an area governor now?" And so kudos to her for remembering that conversation. And I took on the area governor role. I became a division governor. And at that time, I didn't feel ready to go into the district trio. And I became the district webmaster for a year and the district speakers bureau chairman for a year. And then I ran for the position of lieutenant governor marketing, which is now club growth director, and took on that role, had a very successful year. We were president's distinguished district, and, you know, number 5 or 6 in the world. Wow. And then the following year, was the year before a split. We'd grown so much we needed to split our district. And we had some challenges that year. And then I was the first district governor for the current boundaries of District 47. And after that, I ran for international director in Malaysia in 2014 unsuccessfully, which was probably the most significant thing that happened to me in terms of my personal development, because that loss of that election when I thought I was going to do much better really made me reflect on the way I landed on people and the way I was being transparent with people about who I am. Because what I was hearing consistently was, well, Matt, we can tell you're a smart guy, but who are you? We don't know, because I had this huge barrier that was between me and other people that I thought was protecting myself emotionally. And when I explored that and realized what the cause of that was, which actually went back to something in high school that had happened. And when I got through that, it was an instant change in the way people reacted to me. And what I realized was that self-protection mechanism I put in place was doing me more harm than it was good, because it was keeping me from experiencing genuine relationships with many people. I mean, my wife obviously got through it. My kids got through it. So not everybody was kept out, but way too many people were kept out. And that change helped me become run again 2 years later in 2016 in Washington, D.C., actually, and become international director. I completed my term there and immediately ran for second vice president and was elected last year. And I've told many people, and I'd be glad to share this with you, if I had won the election in 2014 in Malaysia, I never would have become second vice president. I needed that experience and that reflection to move myself to a higher level of performance and a higher level of interaction with other people.
Yes. In your press release, you're quoted as saying, "I've learned that to be most successful, you need to lead with your heart, not your head." And it sounds like that experience was one of those experiences that that taught you the importance of leading with your heart and not with your head.
Yeah.
Are there others?
Yeah, well, that experience did, and this heart-head thing, it's not that your head isn't important. You know, you need to lead with your heart and support it with your head, support it with your intellectual capacity, with your knowledge, with your background. That's all head stuff. But leading with the heart, and we're a relationship organization.
Yes.
That's how we started. And what really drove it home to me was I was actually talking to a past international president who had known me for a while, and I was getting to run again in 2016. And I was speaking to her, and I was like, so after I asked her for generic advice, and I said, okay, is there anything specific you've seen in me that you think I need to work on that I'm not aware of? And she made this comment, and she was like, well, Matt, in my experience, a lot of people, they're coming from their head instead of their heart. And I was just kind of taking notes. I said, okay. She goes, Matt, put the pen down. Listen to me. You need to leave. And I tell that story, and she's like, well, Matt, I wasn't that harsh with you. I said, no, but it makes a better story if you were that harsh with me. But she was like going, Matt, you're not understanding. I'm talking to you specifically, not in general, because this is something you do. You come from your head. And I understood that. And when I explored it, what I realized was that in my household growing up, and I'm not upset about this, my success was based around academic performance and intellectual achievement. My athletics accomplishments didn't mean as much. My personal achievements and relationships didn't mean as much. What meant something was academic achievement and intellectual capacity. And so that's where I've gone to in times of stress, because that's where I had gotten positive feedback from my parents and others around me for that. And it just has opened up a whole new world to me. And I remember one of my good friends, she and I served as lieutenant governors of marketing together. And when we met, it was like within a couple of days, it was like we'd known each other forever. Just one of those things. And, she lives in Australia. I'm here in the U.S. We still speak as often as we can. And when I came to that realization and I asked her, I was like, did you notice this barrier? And she goes, yeah, I noticed it, but I was coming through it. because I saw that there was something about you that just attracted me in a friendship way, so that we could have a meaningful relationship. And most people aren't going to do that. And when she told me that she saw this barrier and decided to come through it, that was what really hit me, because she's a significant friend for me and my wife. We adore her, she adores us, and my life would be diminished without her in it. And that's when it really hit me, because I was like, I almost pushed this person away. And if she hadn't been willing to fight through the effort to get to know me, I wouldn't have had this friendship. And that was another moment that really hit me when I had that conversation about it.
Excellent. Matt, what are the most significant changes that you've seen over the past 17 years in Toastmasters?
I think, well, the most significant changes, I'll speak pre-COVID and current, okay? Because pre-COVID, the change to a new educational system, clearly significant. It impacts how we learn. Doesn't really impact our club meeting that much. The projects are different. It's a different textbook. But it does impact the way we learn. And what it did was it combined the communication and leadership tracks into a single effort. Right. So I've heard people say, oh, well, there's not as much communication track. No, every track is a communication track, but there may be a focus on leadership. So that's been a huge change in the organization. Another change in the organization was the realignment of the district recognition program. So it was more in line with the club recognition program. When I started out, we were counting CCs, ACs, membership payments, and paid clubs. We call it going camping. That's the way we talked about it in my district. And when we changed it from CCs and ACs to distinguished clubs, it changed the behavior of district officers. So we were no longer calling our successful clubs at the end of the year going, we need a couple more CCs, we need a couple more ACs. The clubs were the district officers were spending their time focused on those clubs who needed to become distinguished. And distinguished does matter. We know that clubs that are distinguished are 5 times more likely to still be a club 5 years later than those that are not distinguished. So sometimes I hear people say, oh, distinguished doesn't matter. It's just something that Toastmasters International or that the district wants us to do. But it does matter because it's measuring fundamental items that speak to the longevity of the club. So it's clubs that are distinguished last longer. We know that without a doubt. Why do they last longer? That we have correlation, not causation. So there's still some more exploring to do there, but we know distinguished does matter. So that's a change. Now with COVID, we're still figuring out that change. And this change to online training as the de facto way we're training right now, this change to online meetings is the only way we can meet right now in most of the world. We don't know what that's going to end up looking like, and we're exploring it and we're learning lessons. We're hearing from members, and that's the most important thing. Is this more than anything we've done over the last few years? Yeah, we talk to members about pathways. In fact, the member in your local area, Paul White, was very influential and very involved in pathways development. But now we're listening to our members in a different way, because now it's about how do we meet in this environment and what are the best practices, because we need to share those. So that change is still ongoing. And if you had told me in August that our organization could have been as agile as we've been over the last 4 months, 5 months, I'm not sure I would have believed you. But we've shown extreme agility, and that will continue.
It has been a great learning experience for a lot of us.
Yeah.
One that we did not choose, but I think that all of us have responded very well to it.
The vast majority of our members have responded well, and those who have had to take time to take care of health issues, to take care of work issues, I completely understand. So there's no disappointment there. I'm disappointed for the organization, but each member has to make an informed decision about what's in their best interest during this time.
Right. Matt, what's your favorite moment in Toastmasters, looking back?
My favorite moment, I will tell you a sense of when I saw the results of the election in Washington, D.C., it wasn't about getting the position. It was about what getting the position said about my ability to take feedback in. And if you remember, I talked about
Yes.
receiving feedback and taking positive feedback and learning how to adapt that into my style was one of the things that drew me to Toastmasters. So that was a moment where I was like, I've done it. I've figured out how to do that. Maybe it took me 15, 14 years to get there, but I figured out how to adapt and how to take feedback and incorporate it in a positive way in my life. So that was an acknowledgement for me personally. My other favorite moment was probably, has been watching my son develop. He's completing his second DTM. He was the Pathways Chair for our district the last 2 years. He served as an area director. He's our membership retention chair for the U.S. portion of our district this year. And watching language change from hearing people say, oh, he's Matt's son, to, oh, that's Brandon's father, has been very, very powerful, because what it does is it tells me that Toastmasters works. It tells me that I didn't screw him up too badly. And it tells me that he's become a man in his own right.
Thank you. You may have already answered this, but I'll ask it anyway. What's the most difficult thing that you have achieved in Toastmasters, and how did you achieve it?
The most difficult thing I actually achieved was taking our district conference back to the Bahamas. So when I was district governor, I came to our lieutenant governor education training, or program quality director now, and I said, I want to get our district conference back to the Bahamas. It had been 15 years since we'd had a conference in the Bahamas. And everybody's like, we can't make it work. We can't make it work. It's too expensive. We're not going to get a quorum there. We're not going to have all these things happen. And I said, no, we'll figure it out. And we did. Was it difficult? Yeah, it was difficult. Negotiating with the hotels, getting a rate. But we ended up getting a $100 a room rate in Atlantis, which is unheard of. Yeah. We ended up getting $50,000 from the Bahamian government to do a reception on their cost for all of our members on Friday evening. And we got the Royal Bahamian Police Band to come in, and we got Junkanoo as a music style. It's a huge festival in the Bahamas. We got the winners of the Junkanoo Festival to come in and teach people some traditional Bahamian dance. We got so much from the work of our members in the Bahamas, and our conference chair, who was in the Bahamas, Damian Miller at the time, did such a fabulous job with helping us make the conference a success. So we actually broke even on the conference. Wow. And I was willing to lose a little bit. I didn't want to lose a ton of money, but I was willing to lose some because it'd been so long. And I think we had almost 200 first-timers attending from the Bahamas because they couldn't afford the conference plus the plane flight plus the hotel room, but they could afford the conference. And yeah, we had some people complain, oh, well, it's so expensive to go to the Bahamas. I'm like, well, they've been coming over here for 15 years. I think we can figure out how to get over there occasionally. So that was probably the most difficult thing I accomplished, was getting that to work and getting a quorum. We got our quorum barely, but we got our quorum for the business.
Well, congratulations. Matt, you're the CEO of your own company. Been in Boy Scouts leadership for a long time. Second Vice President of Toastmasters International. All impressive accomplishments. How do you juggle those roles, and how do they support one another?
Let's talk about how they support each other. So everything I learned in Toastmasters has made me more effective as a business owner. Everything I've learned in Scout leadership has helped me with my Toastmasters leadership. And the things the Scouts have gone through over the past few years are things Toastmasters is going through right now. So there are experiences I can draw on from my business career, from Boy Scouts, that apply directly to some of the challenges Toastmasters have. Branding is a great example. We took over a huge branding exercise in the Boy Scouts a few years before Toastmasters did, and getting people to operate more from a process as opposed to entrepreneurial. And that's what Toastmasters is going through right now, becoming a little more process driven, but still embracing the personality driven aspects of the organization. The juggling. Okay, I will tell you, multitasking does not work. Okay, there are statistically less than 1% of people, and that's generous, who can actually multitask. It just doesn't happen. We know Leonardo da Vinci could, because he could write with both hands different sentences at the same time. That doesn't happen to most people. So what it is what most people do, they call that is actually time dividing, and it's having intense focus on what I'm doing at the moment. So if I'm working on Toastmasters, I'm shut out, whether it's for 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, I'm shutting out everything else so that I can stay focused on that. If I'm working my business, I'm not thinking about Toastmasters. I'm not thinking about Scouts. I'm not thinking about my family. I'm focused on my business for that time period. And that's the only way I can do it. People make time for those things that are important to them and the things that bring value to their life. And so all of those bring value to my life. And fundamentally, at the core of them, they're all about the same thing. Toastmasters helps people build self-confidence through communication and leadership skills. Scouts helps young people gain self-confidence through outdoor skills and leadership learning experience, and with the goal of making them better citizens. My business, we make our clients look good, and we give them confidence that their systems are going to stay up and running, and they're not going to look bad on the phone with their clients because their computer's having a problem. That's what we do. And so fundamentally, we're doing the same thing in different ways. We're loaning our credibility to our clients. We're loaning our credibility through scouting and through Toastmasters to other people to help make them become more fully realized business owners, young people, or adult learners.
And with the new partnership with Rotary, do you see that continuing in the same vein?
Yeah, well, I mean, Rotary is a service organization, and you know, so they're complementary to us because we're an educational organization. But Dr. Smedley never talked about keeping our skills in Toastmasters. He talked about us learning the skills and practicing the skills and then taking them out into the world. And Rotary is a great venue for members to do that, as well as scouting programs, Boys and Girls Clubs, Doctors Without Borders, Susan G. Komen Cancer Foundation. All of these are great, fantastic organizations that serve the community. So our challenge is to take that leadership skills that we learn in Toastmasters and put in practice in a positive, supportive environment, and learn those lessons there, and then take them out where they're making a huge difference in other aspects of the world. So absolutely, I see that. And I see other potential alliances and other potential partnerships with other organizations in the future when they make sense to both organizations.
Right. Now, you mentioned the transition to Pathways from the Legacy program. Could you tell us about your own transition from Legacy to Pathways?
Yeah, I've completed 3 paths. I'm working on my 4th path now. The minute Pathways came out, I completed every traditional program that I had out there, and I put them aside. And why did I do that? Well, one, I was on the board, so I felt it was important to make an example at the time. Secondly, then I was running for the board again for executive office, so it was even more important for me to set the example. But it's been interesting because you're doing the same thing in a different way. Right. And it's taken some getting used to. The CC manual was about building blocks. Pathways is more of a holistic approach. Now you can debate which is more effective, but the reality is that they're just different ways to get to the same means. And, you know, there's strengths in both of them. So this is actually closer to the way Toastmasters originally was founded. There was no manual for the first more than 20 years. There was no CC manual. Dr. Smedley fought creating one, if you read his history. And members finally created one. It was a 15-speech project to become the competent Toastmaster, which then became the competent communicator with a 10, and then they moved to 10 projects. And when they moved from 15 projects to 10 projects, everybody was upset. When they advanced and created the advanced Toastmaster, everybody was upset. So people get upset with change, but it's just change.
Right.
And you need to figure out what are the strengths of it. And if there's things that we can improve on, absolutely. And we've been improving on pathways, and we'll continue to improve on pathways because it's our future. It's our present.
Right.
And so what I would encourage members to do is just figure out how to work the educational system. I don't even talk about pathways anymore. I said, this is a Toastmasters educational program. That's what it is.
And I've been very impressed with the wide variety of competencies that have been added in pathways. So, what advice would you offer to someone who is completely new to Toastmasters?
Approach Toastmasters as a student. When I look at it, what is that student mindset? That student mindset is a willingness to explore, a willingness to take risk, a willingness to put yourself out there and open yourself up to criticism. Open yourself up to the potential of not doing well and maybe feeling embarrassed because something happened to you. Be willing to put yourself out there. Toastmasters will only give as much to you as you put into it. It actually will give more to you than you put into it. But you've got to start it. I grew up on a farm outside of Muncie, Indiana, and we had one of those old-fashioned hand pumps that had the best water I've ever had in my life, but you had to work for it. Yep. And the last thing you did before you walked away was you filled up the cup and you left it on top of the pump so that the next person could prime the pump. You had to pour some water into it, because if you poured some water into it, it was a lot easier to get more water out of it. But if you didn't do that and it was a hot day, you could work for forever trying to get water out of that pump because it just wasn't going to do it until it got moisturized, until everything happened. And so I know what prime the pump means, and you got to prime the pump in Toastmasters. You got to put you got to put yourself out there and get a little into into discomfort. And that could be fear-based, that could be skill-based, but get into discomfort, because the zone of lack of comfort is where growth happens.
Right. A mentee of mine used to say, there is no comfort in the growth zone and no growth in the comfort zone.
That's a good way to look at it.
Okay. You've given some great advice for people who are brand new to Toastmasters. What about people who have just completed their DTM in the Legacy program and looking forward? What advice would you give to us?
So number one, if you're concerned that you feel like you're starting over with pathways, you're not starting over. You're starting a new journey. Okay, the pathways journey is a new journey, and everything you have learned so far in Toastmasters is 100% applicable from a leadership development, from a communication development. Yes, you don't know every project in the CC manual because that doesn't exist anymore. So that knowledge is being replaced with something else. But all of the skills you've learned, everything you've learned is still applicable. The DTM is not the end of the journey. And to me, it's the start of the journey. You now have the ability to use your influence with other people at an even greater level. You are the person that other people are going to look up to and look to provide guidance and answers. So wield that with discretion. Okay, I would encourage you to use exploratory language and not judgmental language. I would encourage you to step aside and let other people lead. I've seen a lot of DTMs who are serving in club leadership roles over and over and over again, and that's okay. But is there somebody else who could do the job? Maybe not as well as you, but this is a leadership development organization. Right. It's not about, it's more important in my mind for someone to take their first few steps than for you to take the next step at the club level. Same thing at the district level. I try not to repeat offices. Why would I take that opportunity away from somebody else? So if you can lead from behind rather than leading from ahead, that's a great opportunity for you to learn how to lead from behind and being supportive of those individuals on leadership and encouraging people to take their next step, because that's where your growth is going to happen, to learn how to influence even more.
Yes. Great. Matt, one last question. If you would please summarize the opportunities and the challenges you see ahead in the next few years in Toastmasters.
We're in a changing world, and the reality is there's almost zero chance we're going to go back to the way things were. Yep. So this is your opportunity to embrace change and to learn what you can. There's an opportunity for Toastmasters as an organization to become the thought leader on this small online meeting format. We're running 10,000 plus meetings a week, is the best I can figure, on an online platform. That's probably more than any other organization out there, especially any other educational organization. And so we've got the opportunity to become a thought leader in this space to help people understand this. This is a skill that's going to become increasingly important. We're hearing stories of companies that are telling people, you don't have to ever come back to the office. Twitter has already made that announcement. Facebook has said that 50% of their employees will work from home permanently in the future, within the next 5 years. Ameriprise Financial, from what I understand, is looking to get rid of corporate real estate and allowing people to work from home because they're finding out it works well. And yes, there are some drawbacks, but they're getting more benefit than drawbacks. So why have these huge offices if it's not producing value for the organization? So this meeting format is going to be increasingly important. I have professional speakers. Almost every one of their contracts that they're signing right now has an online or virtual fallback if they can't meet in person for an event. So that's just the way things are going to be going forward for the foreseeable future. So there's an opportunity for us to help people understand that this is a great place to learn those skills. You know, to learn the thing about looking into the camera versus looking at the screen when you're talking. When you're listening, yeah, look at the person, but when you're talking, look in the camera. Just that little subtle difference of a few inches makes a huge difference. Right. The lighting, do you have good lighting? These things are going to be increasingly important. The other opportunity is for us to figure out, to reach out to people who we've lost membership because they moved to another city, they moved to another department in the government, and they can't meet now. Well, guess what? The barriers are lower. So we've reduced barriers for travel. Think about the economic impact. If you take a look at pictures of Venice, okay, and the water in Venice is clear right now because the cruise ships aren't coming in and people aren't coming in millions of people a year right now. And the water is clear. Think about the environmental. You know, I know this is hurting people in the oil industry, but there are some benefits that we're seeing out of this from an environmental impact, and it's causing people to question, do we need this travel that we've done so much more when we're getting 80% of it through the online experience? So there's a lot of opportunities for us to reach out to your former members, invite them to come back, just invite them to come back for one meeting, and they're going to remember the joy they had, the learning they had, and there's a lot of them are rejoining Toastmasters. So there's an opportunity. So there are a lot of opportunities for us. The challenges are how to learn to do things differently. So here's a great example. In a physical meeting, if you see a visitor start to walk out the door, it's very simple for somebody to get up and intercept them and find out what's going on, do some follow-up with them, make sure we can keep in contact with them. On an online environment, they disappear. So use breakout rooms. Invite them into the breakout room with your VP of membership a few minutes before the end of the meeting so they don't just disappear on you, so that you can find out what's going on with them. So that's an opportunity. we don't have a physical packet to give to members. That's a challenge. We used to have these great physical packets with flyers and brochures and application forms. Well, now you got to do that via email. So create an amazing email letting people know all the benefits of joining your club. Put videos in it of your members of your club speaking about why they're in Toastmasters and what it's done for them, so that they get this shock and awe email a couple of hours after the meeting. And they're like, oh my goodness, I got to join this group of people, because we don't have the packet to give them. So we have to figure out how to accomplish those same goals differently. You know, most clubs have a guest book. Create an online guest book. Send the link, make sure people sign up so you can keep in touch with them. And look at some of the marketing things that business people do with drip marketing campaigns, putting them on your email list. Until they tell you, leave me alone, keep following up with them, because it takes the average person 7 times to get a yes in a sales environment. Why would Toastmasters be any different?
Right. Matt, thank you very much. This has been a real treat for me to get your insight. Thank you for sharing those insights and your great example with people throughout District 27.
Thank you, Tom. It's my pleasure to be here and to get to know you a little bit better. The members of District 27, I want you to know the board, our staff, our chief executive officer, we're with you 100%. If you have things you want to talk to you about, go through your area director, go through your district director. They will pass that information on. Call World Headquarters, talk to the club services team. They will help you with whatever you need. We are here to help your success, both at the club level and on your personal development. And if there's anything I can do, please know that my heart is with you, and I will do whatever I can to support your development and your journey. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, members of District 27.
Thank you, Matt. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.